I think we're gonna go ahead and get ourselves started. Poor Jen's been sitting here waiting patiently. So the second session shall begin. Jen's going to talk to us about her work, and whenever you're ready, take off.
Yes, so my name is Jen Cole. I am an assistant volleyball coach, at a Division II institution in the Southeast. And the goal of my research was to identify the role of student-athlete leadership development in Division II athletics. So the problem is that sport participation alone is not enough, has been shown to be not enough to spur the development of leadership skills in student athletes. There are distinct challenges at the Division II level in implementing leadership skills in student athletes, and little is known about what leadership development opportunities are available for Division II student athletes. So prior to my current role as an assistant coach, I was an athletic trainer for 10 years at the Division II level. And during that time, I recognized that student athletes are lacking or not able to demonstrate effective leadership skills such as communication, motivation, self-confidence, and those behaviors and skills are important because they benefit an athlete's ability or a student athlete's ability to be successful in life, in sport, and in the classroom. So benefits in the team aspect or on a team are they improve the team's communication skills, they improve team chemistry, the team's resilience to adverse conditions, and off the field, athletes who have strong leadership skills serve as role models, mentor teammates, and overall just improve the team's chemistry. But the benefits of athlete leadership for themselves or the team expands beyond that, as student athletes who develop these leadership skills positively after their time in sport contribute to society as they have the behaviors of showing concern, caring concern for others. They have strong interpersonal skills. They are vocal and they are trustworthy. So intentional programming, being purposeful about student-athlete development and their leadership skills. Intentional programming has been shown as an effective way to foster these skills. And intentional programming, what that looks like is a cohort, kind of like us, a cohort of student-athletes progress through a curriculum together, and they meet regularly. In addition to sport participation not being enough to spur development, there are socio-cultural and biobehavioral factors that are delaying the transition to adulthood. So scholars have identified this new stage in development called emerging adulthood. So individuals between the age of 18 and 28 fall into this category. And scholars have evidence further shows that we should recognize this population as a group who needs specialized skills as they are continuing to form their identity, their values during a time where they are going through changes in relationships, going through changes in educational pursuits and social roles. So knowing what athlete leadership is, the benefits and what programming looks like, for the purpose of my study, it's also important to know what a mission statement is and how that, what role that plays for a university. So a mission statement, it serves as a unify stakeholders to achieve a common goal. Governing bodies of higher education and sport have agreed that leadership development is important for students and for student athletes. But institutions are not always willing to dedicate the necessary resources in achieving these goals, those aims. In Division II athletics, challenges such as a lack of resources have been shown to be one reason why these types of schools are not investing in the development of the student athlete's leadership skills. But what organizational capacity or what organizational research kind of tells us is that it's not always the resources available that are important in creating these programs, but how well these institutions are able to mobilize both internal and external resources. So the aims for my study, I have 3 of them. To determine the extent to which Division II athletic departments are mobilizing their resources, implementing these leadership development opportunities. To determine how athletic department mission statements address student athlete leadership development, and to determine the perceptions of student athletes who have participated or have experience in leadership development. To do this, for the first aim, the population was one Division II conference in the Southeast. The first aim asked athletic directors, faculty athletic representatives, and head coaches from the entire conference questions about their organizational capacity and how they are mobilizing their resources in order to implement a leadership development opportunity. Descriptive statistics were used to analyze that data. For the second aim, I used the mission statements on athletic department websites, analyzed those, and then also looked for any services that athletic departments publicized on their website that supported or provided evidence that there was or they were doing something to promote student athlete leadership. And then the last aim to meet that was a questionnaire sent to one school in that Division II conference, so only student athletes at one school. They were sent us an online survey asking them for their feedback on if they have held leadership positions in college athletics or outside of college athletics, what their experiences have been, and if they have interest in participating in a leadership development program, and then if they have any suggestions as to what should be included in that. Descriptive statistics were also used to analyze that data. So the results from these for the first aim, which was, hey, athletic directors, faculty athletic representatives, and head coaches, what are you doing to implement and support the development of leadership in your student athletes? It used organizational capacity themes from the research to break it down into structural, financial, and human resources. And what came back was 58, ended up being 58 total participants sent their feedback, and 33% are using student athlete feedback in the form of an exit interview. 31% often, or a moderate amount, use campus partnerships to try to find resources to support that, finding the resources on campus. 22% use community partnerships. 20% campus partnerships for manpower to try to get some staffing. Alumni feedback was used sparingly, as was focus groups, student athlete feedback focus groups. For the financial resources, internal funds were used about 24% of the time. Campus partnerships to secure funds, 20%, and then going down from there, NCAA leadership development resources only used about 18% of the time. NCAA grants and then corporate donated funds were also asked of the administrators. Human resources was the last component of the organizational capacity research, and these questions asking the administrators to answer: is leadership development of student athletes a priority in your role? Is leadership development a responsibility? And do the student athletes actually participate in the decision making? So that was these were some of the high points, and most common, or majority agreed that it was their responsibility and it was a priority. The survey also contained some open-ended questions, asking administrators and head coaches what are the biggest challenges for implementing leadership development programming. And what they found, or what they came back with, was money was the first, time. We don't have the time, we don't have the personnel, and we don't have a support from higher leadership. Suggestions as to, well, how can we make this happen? They came back with researching what best practices really are, implementing or revamping what we already have in place, and increasing staff and department buy-in. The results from my second aim, which was the mission statement, only one university out of 13 in this Division II conference has specifically emphasized leadership development as a priority. It's important to know that 10 did include the term develop or development in regards to their student athletes, but there was no evidence on these websites from the athletic departments that there was any indication of a formal program. And then finally, the results from my last aim, which was for the student athletes at one institution, was about 70% perceived that they had never held a leadership position in sport. 86 perceived that they never held a leadership position outside of sport. But about 36% did have interest, and over half, over 50%, might be interested. When asking them what should be included, they said they want to know how to lead, which is pretty broad, but they want to know how to lead, and they want communication skills and talking with teammates, coaches, professors. When asking them what would make a program more attractive to you, flexible times and advertisements and incentives. So the main findings from my research is that student athletes are interested in acquiring positive leadership skills. Athletic department stakeholders, they do value the student athlete voice. They do use their feedback to help make decisions, but they agree that it's their responsibility and priority, but they are not fully mobilizing all of their available resources, going back to that organizational capacity, the structural, financial, and human resources. So they may benefit from investing in mobilizing those resources, building relationships, utilizing student affairs, professionals on campus, getting out in the community and building relationships, utilizing the NCAA, some grants that they have, and some training opportunities that they have. So further, there's a contradiction about, or between what is being said. It is their responsibility. So the athletic administrators and the head coaches, they do think it's their responsibility and priority, but they're not necessarily doing anything about it, or don't have evidence of having an action plan. The implications for professional practice: athletic administrators should utilize untapped resources that are available on their campus and in their community. Most athletic departments do include the word develop, as I said, in their mission statements. So implementing positive youth development programming, they kind of align, so that could be beneficial for them. Including leadership development, specifically in their athletic department mission statements for strategic planning purposes, and then publicizing leadership development initiatives on their website to strengthen the organization's identity. Those were the main findings from my research, and ideas for moving forward and recommendations for moving forward. So I'll take any questions that anyone has at this time.
Sorry. I thought it was one of the very good job, by the way. I'm interested in this one because I come from a department where leadership is instilled in every single area, including our NCAA athletics. So we might be held to a different standard, but if the NCAA is putting out all this great leadership development material, did you find out whether the NCAA is actually holding anyone accountable under their NCAA umbrella for actually utilizing this material? Is there any assessment procedure that the NCAA is using?
Yeah, not that I'm aware of. they offer it. SAC is kind of given the responsibility to promote and share that information. How well, I don't know the answer as to how well SAC representatives are sharing that. And coaches and administrators too, but through the student athletes, the SAC would be the.
Are any of the schools that you had information from, are they any part of the Middle States Commission on Higher Education accreditation?
That's a good question. I would assume, but I don't know the answer.
Because I've sent out a couple of Middle States committees, and I know that right now the athletic departments are being put on point to be able to prove that they're actually meeting, in some cases, they actually have student-oriented outcomes. But they're also meeting those outcomes, or at least have the process that goes toward meeting those outcomes. So we might see a little change.
Yeah, the Knight Commission on Intercollegiate Athletics, that goes back to the 90s, but that was also, they are encouraging, forcing, strongly recommending that athletic departments are moving from just what they say they want to do to actually doing something, and then being challenged as to what are you now actually doing.
No one else wants to ask. You're talking about in your document putting this into practice, and I know you've developed your own program. So we've been talking about that and how that relates to some of your findings, or how you put some of them into practice.
Yeah, so using the results from this research, I created a program called Charging On, and it breaks it up into everyone kind of participates in these online modules. A select group of student athletes will participate in developing a specific skill set, and then those who participated in that second year kind of are given an opportunity to progress and move on. Knowing that student athletes want flexible times, want a diverse group of participants, want to know how to communicate better, want to know kind of how to lead and what leadership looks like. So being able to motivate teammates, having increased self-confidence, resilience to adverse circumstances, giving them the skills or teaching them the skills of how do you do that? What does that look like? So that's what's included in that program. That answer.
I just wanted to talk about it.
Yeah.
Is that required? Are you requiring that program?
It's not required, no. For me, it has not, there's been a lot of resistance into kind of providing a program. I think maybe due to being able to sustain something like that at my institution. So it's not required, and this next year will be the first year. So maybe after that, on that, I do have colleagues who are implementing programs similar to what I have, and they are for credit. For credit. Yeah.
Who teaches those courses?
They are student athlete development. There's different titles, but like director of student athlete development at X University. So they kind of have a background in academic services, and that's kind of their specialty. We don't have that role at our institution.
So, as someone who's done this, been on a year or two of this, of starting leadership development, course for our student athletes, for your cohort, how did you, one, incentivize student athletes to participate, and two, how did you get people to come in? Was it coach led? Did the coaches ask you to develop leadership skills within the specific cohort?
So the program the first year will be the fall. So I haven't implemented anything yet. As far as what the student athletes want and trying to get them to participate, there is an interest. So using their interest to just sign up and be kind of like the first year, kind of like the test drive it. Within the program, there are t-shirts, there are completion gifts, and it will be offered once we get the group of student athletes who are going to participate with flexible times. So it's reflective of what they want. It's reflective of what the research shows. What was the second part of your question?
Are coaches nominating student athletes to participate in this to further foster their leadership skills?
So coaches will nominate, a survey will be sent to all student athletes whoever wants to participate. Due to funding, it will be limited to 30 student athletes. So from whoever applies and whoever was nominated, the most diverse group of student athletes that we can get to have the most meaningful conversations and discussions would be selected.
You would pick two important things from this study that you're absolutely using in this new program. What would it
The results from this communication, results from this study.
be? Yeah.
The results from my study did not show confidence and motivation, but if I were to pick two skills, it would be communication and a growth mindset.
Are you getting buy-in from coaches on
Yeah.
the leadership program?
Yeah.
Is it across all sports, or you see certain goals there?
I would answer that by across the board, the majority, yes. The sports who are not interested in other resources also available.
Is that separated by gender also? That they're not interested?
No.
That might have come out with that. Like a male sport.
Or
Yeah.
priority for it.
No.
Did you? So you had to have buy-in to start this, right? Did you have buy-in pretty much across the coaches and across people generally? Or did you just nest itself within a small group of people who kind of took your idea and pushed it forward?
Yeah, so the coaches value their student athletes having leadership. Being an athletic trainer and working with different teams, you're kind of just having these conversations and share frustrations with certain behaviors that student athletes may display. So knowing that is kind of what sparked my interest in there's a gap between what student athletes need to know, all students really need to know, and behaviors and skills to grow as an individual and what they have. So what can kind of fill that gap? As far as coach buy-in to support, the coaches didn't know about this until maybe a month or two ago. So I just kind of took the initiative we need this, and so we're going to kind of make it happen. And to the administration first, this is the idea that aligns with the NCAA's mission, that aligns with our mission, that aligns with the university's mission as to this is what we say we want to do and what's important, so how are we going to do it? And aligning those objectives to what the programming is and what the curriculum is. Hopefully, by the end of next year, we can do an assessment and have outcomes that will then generate more.
You pretty much sold it yourself.
Correct.
You were the person who
Well, I was fortunate enough to, go to trainings through the NCAA and took advantage of what they have to offer to have the tools and confidence really to propose this.
So you noted this contradiction between what's being said about leadership and what's being done.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we see that with leadership in different contexts. I've looked at that in a more youth setting. And the way we look at it and work I've done is if you prioritize leadership, then kids are actually in leadership roles. Mm-hmm. So if I go watch you teach, kids get to lead a team or an activity. And also being kind of following roles with another leader, they have opportunities to succeed and to fail, to reflect on that, get feedback on that, etc. So you can get to this granular level of understanding what leadership looks like. Mm-hmm. And it just sounds like when we talk about it in the context you are, I don't think they're talking about leadership, right? They're talking about communication skills and the ability to be resilient and getting through your sport, but what specifically is leadership in this, and how's that understood in the context of collegiate athletics?
Yeah, that's a great question. Leadership, going back to the benefits and what I was able to observe is athletes who are perceived as leaders by their teammates and coaches are able to effectively communicate, are able to have intrinsic motivation, able to find and build intrinsic motivation, and able to motivate their teammates. So that kind of aligning with growth mindset. Being good communicators, being able to have crucial conversations. To the growth mindset and the failure, experiencing failure, and then knowing the role of effort and what effort plays in achieving a goal. Those skills are included in what is perceived as leadership from what the research tells us. So these are behaviors of leadership. And they're skills, it's a behavior because it's how you are now, but it's also a skill because you can learn how to develop it. So that's kind of what, based on what the research as leadership is and what it looks like, taking that as that's, I'm not answering your question anymore.
No, you're getting there. I'm gonna just follow on a little bit. You are. So, would you agree that leadership at some level means that you're like in charge of a group, leading a group of people in some capacity? Is that how you would?
It can, but I think that leadership is influence and influence to achieve a common goal. So you can have a formal leadership role or informal leadership role. So you can be a captain and you might be a freshman incoming.
Right.
But if you're a captain, you're labeled a formal leadership role, you are given maybe more opportunities to be in a leadership or lead, but everyone is a leader if you influence someone.
Right.
Positive.
Okay. Yeah. And final point, do you, is it the intention that students learn these leadership goals and practice them beyond the sports? Like, it seems like there's this implicit idea that they're going to learn leadership in sports and become better people. Mm-hmm. Is there anything, intentional practices that you're seeing where they do things to give student athletes a chance to be leaders in other contexts so that those skills are transferred beyond sports?
So do you mean like a relationship with like the campus or the community, having leadership roles in that capacity, or like a youth sport?
I think any of the above. I mean, those are all good examples of like actually applying that beyond the sports setting.
So there is an importance and emphasis on that scholars and practitioners not like across the board do, but that is important to be able to transfer those skills. Is it a part of a program, like a specific part of a program? I don't know.
Through your research, what were you able to look at Division I schools and see kind of what they're doing, and how has anybody done this for Division I? Because I mean, I know it's more widespread, and I know for schools like mine, we didn't have it until we started it 2 years ago. So,
for my research, I didn't look at any Division I, which my institution does have Division I hockey, so that's interesting, but they weren't included in the study. In my dissertation, there's a list of the universities at Division I institutions who do have these programs. And it is interesting, like the staffing level, like some have like 5 professionals that are dedicated just to implementing these programs. And they have mandatory courses, and that's just not at the Division II level yet. Most places.
for the smaller Division I.
Or smaller Division I, yeah.
Mike, you can get free from that. What you can see with leadership. How are you going to infuse your concept into the course? How are you going to work that?
So the curriculum includes active learning sessions, so discussions between between peers about, so like the growth mindset, there are readings, but about growth mindset. So a question, what role has effort played in your life? And having student athletes discuss that. What role has failure played in your life? And student athletes discuss that, giving specific examples. So having them be able to have a conversation about what the learning outcome is, but based it kind of on experiences that they have, they can kind of understand it better and it means more, to be able to then take that, oh yeah, I fail sometimes, but it usually makes me stronger, or I learn from it and I get better. So that would be growth mindset. There are readings that are on emotional intelligence and being able to manage yourself, recognizing emotions in yourself, manage yourself, recognizing emotions in others, and then manage those roles. So that's important to being a leader. The crucial conversations and the strengths finder. Strength-Based Leadership by Dr. Tom Rath. Understanding yourself or your own strengths, recognizing your own strengths helps build confidence, which can lead to more effective leadership. Knowing kind of when to take the lead and when not to take the lead.
There's I guess since there's a need for like resources to do programs related to leadership development, is there any interest in like pedagogical training for leadership development, given that coaches spend so much time with athletes?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you just feel like coaches are really focused on more athletic development?
From my experience, I feel like coaches prioritize athletic development, appreciate the need for leadership, but aren't held accountable for that, and with that, do it in their own ways. So just having conversations with coaches that within the last 6 months, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm doing, this is what book study our team is doing. We're going on a retreat this weekend. So they kind of do it in their own ways. They might be forced to kind of do that in their own ways because they don't have a structure for what that looks like for our institution.
Nobody's in it?
No, there were two. But then maybe for a few minutes they stopped. I send the right, correct emails?
Yeah, I think so.
Anyway, they have to find the recordings when they have time.
Looks good to me. Kind of on my paper.
Yeah, I know. What class?
Special topics.
Ah, it's she's Dr. Berkeley's wife.
Yes.
Yeah, we registered that class last of this semester, in early of this month, dropped off because I sent a message to her, maybe next fall,
Yeah.
next spring.
Yeah.
How long that class?
It's a lot of work. Yeah. A lot of work. It's good. Like, I feel like I've learned a lot. It's interchange techniques. So it's like we have to create a physical activity intervention. So basically, like, pick a population and then like come up with an intervention, basically to make people be more physically active. So it's cool. It's interesting for sure.
But anyway, this semester the class was very heavy.
Yeah.
Heavy in reading and writing.
That's what her class is. Lots of
I've ever taken American history. It's a book about
I'm sure it takes you longer to read though.
yeah, usually in the beginning, I think I still remember the first week I spent more than 20 hours in reading because I need to spend 3 or 4 hours for each chapter. But later on, I find techniques, strategies. Sometimes you need to exclude something that you don't necessarily read it. And also you can download some reviews from it to help you generate. Then you read it, it will be faster. You still need to invest a lot of time. And also another one, community one, so also time consuming. But this American sports history is really good class. But for me, I think, as a foreigner, to understand the American.
I'm like, I don't even think I know much about
Yeah, I
history.
understand. But for me, it was very good. To understand how races, cultures, classes, back to sports.
I'm not sure, because I'm always either coming in from I-70 where I used to live, basically where the field was. I've always gone straight up into the where you down, or where we pick up on.
So will we have our dissertation in the same 15 minutes, 15 minutes?
No, I think it's longer.
Longer, yeah.
Unfortunately, I think ours is like 45.
45, 45. Oh,
Something like that.
yeah.
I know my master's thesis was 30.
30. Oh, yeah. It should be longer than master's thesis.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know, I'm surprised that theirs is so short, to be honest. Pretty quick, you can't really talk about, you can't like really get into what you did very much. What are you thinking about doing for your dissertation?
I'm still thinking. And maybe I think the direction might be the theoretical framework that I will use is like social constructivism. So might be researching colloquial learning, which is then my advisor's special areas. Might be linked to social emotional learning. Will be connected to the social constructivism theory. But we, I think my advisor is applying for a project. So we have maybe if everything goes well, we'll have research in elementary school so that we can collect the data.
That'll be helpful.
I have, this is general thing. I don't have specific plans. As long as we get the project, we can start collecting data.
Are you trying to finish 3 or 4?
3? Four.
Some people do it in 3. I don't know, yeah.
Oh,
I think that's
how
great.
can they do that?
Well, I think it's very hard to do.
Too hard, yeah. Which means you have to get 12 credits each semester. So now currently we have 9 credit hours. So it will spend 5 semesters to get the required credit hours. Yeah, dissertation.
It really just depends on what you're doing, how long it takes to collect your dissertation data.
I think for the physics, for the students that started physics, they might be quicker. But for us, it's like sociology or social science or so I know one of my roommates, he's taking his comms in his first year, doctorate. Yeah, we are safe. We got enrolled last year, and he's taking his comms now. He studied nanoscience.
Very early.
He has already found his direction. He has projects. They have labs, experiments. So he will work with a company or outside his company. We have specific goals or directions. And what are you going to look for?
Not sure yet. I'm generally interested in coach education.
Coach education? Sounds good. Yeah. Coach education. In China, we have a huge problem.
There's no standard or guidelines. Like you can be a coach just because you play a sport, which doesn't.
Yeah, you mean coach in school or coach for professional?
Probably more like college.
college level coach. Let's say in China, we have two different organizations. One is the education department, and the other one is sports department. So they are fighting for this authority. Not in generally, only sports department can have the authority to give certificate for coaching. But now the education department, they want to give special certificate for school coaches. So the education department say, even if you are a coach with sports department certificate, if you don't have school's coaching certificate, you cannot coach. You cannot coach school teams or coach students. So they're fighting. The education department claims that the coaching in schools more emphasized in education. It should not emphasize so much on competitive skills. So, so they believe that coach should learn how to be a teacher first, or
Well, that's, if you think about what customers do, right, they are teaching.
yeah, that's teaching.
So, I mean, it does make sense. You have to be able to teach in order to coach, right?
In China, we said if you want to be a good sports player, you have to be a good person first.
Very, very true, very true.
It's very, schematic.
Yeah, oh yeah, there's no flag. River basins. Right. Yeah, oh yeah, of course. Yeah. Yes, it sucks. Yes. Yeah, layers of started as a bunch of yeah, and I didn't know that.
We have 1 minute.
Just thinking about that question I asked, I'm like, if you give a leadership, there's actual.
All right, officially on my phone now. So we are going to start our final session for the day. So David's going to lead us to the finish.
Thank you. So back to UNCG, thank you for this education and this experience over the last few years. It's been invaluable. Cohort members, thank you for dragging me through this. It's been awesome. So I want to share my dissertation, and it's a huge passion of mine, so I hope that comes through in my delivery. And I'm just being myself as normal, which is not normal. For an overview, people with disabilities, which is approximately 20% of the population, youth are 4.5 times more inactive than their non-disabled peers, which leads to a lot of issues, fatigue, pain, and then at the bottom you have issues, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes. So kind of the heart behind this is kind of a public health issue of people with disabilities suffering from these chronic sedentary-based conditions at a much higher rate than the non-disabled population. So 47% of adults with disabilities are obese, which is 10% higher, and their activity levels are not at a level enough to prevent disease or other chronic conditions. Of course, heart disease is the leading cause of death among people with disabilities. And in fact, it was a bit of a shock for me, which it shouldn't be, but you would think people with disabilities are dying from their disability, but they're not. They're dying from heart disease from the sedentary conditions. So background, people without disabilities typically learn motor skills and they value being physically active, typically during their youth, playing sport, being active, doing recreational activities, So they appreciate that and they value that. We also see that activity for people without disabilities decreases as they transition into adulthood. So that was kind of a big factor for this part. We see that targeted programs tend to reverse that trend. And so as youth participate in very targeted programs, they remain more active as they transition. And conversely, ineffectively designed programs have a negative impact. And so I'm not from a team sport background, but you see a lot of the negative side effects of poorly run sports. Macho, we talked about earlier, they're running for punishment, they're getting a really bad experience. I always tell the joke about my PE teacher in high school, ambulated in a rolling chair. That was my example, that was my role model. And so that was not a very effective design class or the program. So, and the other thing is I started a wheelchair basketball team the same semester I started this program, and I go to these very competitive events, and I see my kids, I call them my kids, my athletes, sometimes not enjoying the game. So this really played a part in this dissertation is my program ineffectively designed? So I want this population to be more active as they transition to adulthood, which most people aren't with disabilities. So I wanted to verify and ensure that my program is going to be the right type of program. Again, more of the issue is people with disabilities do not experience the benefits of that activity as a youth, so thus they don't transition that into their adulthood. There's just a huge lack of opportunities to participate in recreational sport, adaptive sport, and other activities. Again, this is kind of a community-based type concept, not necessarily a physical education, school-based, but I was really more considering when kids would play club soccer, parks and recs, baseball. That was the concept that was there. Again, there are few outlets to play adaptive sports outside of existing federations. So the NWBA is the National Wheelchair Basketball Association. That's who my team's affiliated with. It is the largest Paralympic sport in the world, and that organization is the largest organization in the world for adaptive sport. But it's still pretty small. It's actually very small considered table-wide sports. So most kids or youth with physical disabilities are kind of forced to play in this realm of competitive sport. And that's where brought that question. This is a very competitive sport. You win, sometimes by a lot. And so I wanted to make sure, hey, are we doing a good job at the other end when they grow up? Again, they don't have a lot of options because of the lack of opportunities, so they end up playing these competitive sports. Okay. So the purpose of my study was to determine the influence of participation in youth adaptive sport on physical activity motivation and behavior during adulthood for people with disabilities. So are they being active? Are they motivated to be active once they're adults? If they play youth adaptive sport during their youth, how are they doing after the fact? So the aims, number one, determine the relationship between participating in youth adaptive sport and their current activity habits and their levels of motivation to exercise. And then number two, describe the perceptions of their adaptive sport experiences and its influence on their current activity levels and their motivation. So mixed method study, total of 62 participated, had 50 complete an online survey. And I used two instruments, the BREC 3, which is measures motivation and exercise based on self-determination theory. And the IPAC is a International Physical Activity Questionnaire, and it was actually modified previously to change things. So instead of walking, you could push the wheelchair on that way. Didn't use that type of terminology. And also had some open-ended questions asking about their youth experience. So at 50 fill out the survey, 34 males, 16 females, average age of 39. And aim two was a interview. So I looked at interviewed 12 different individuals, 8 males, 4 females, average age of 38. And I will talk about where participants were very active. And I think if I could say that might have been a limitation of my study, I would say it was, because it wasn't, it didn't display the common person with a disability in America. This is a very active group. And I tried to reach out to organizations that cater to people who may not be active, but people who were active ended up filling out the survey more so, or much more so, than people who were not. So that impacted the results. So came on with a survey. They were very highly active, more so than probably people without disabilities, this population that was in the study. And they were very moderately to highly physically active. The impact kind of measured their met total minutes during a week. So it was pretty good results, and there was a correlation between how active they were and how motivated they were. And I did show the graphic. It kind of makes sense. If you're active, really active, you're probably motivated to be active. So there was a significance there. Maybe I'm downplaying it. I shouldn't, but I kind of felt that was, maybe not an important thing. But 50% of the people in the study did participate in youth adaptive sports. And currently, they were 85% are doing non-team sport activities. I want to mention that a little bit. And actually, we run an ANOVA, and my initial idea was youth adaptive sport makes them more active, but it was kind of the opposite. It was not a significant finding when I run the numbers. So people who didn't participate in youth adaptive sport were actually a little more active for the sample I used. So again, it might have been a limitation there. What we saw from the survey, adults with disabilities were motivated to exercise. They wanted to maintain their health and their physical functioning. They wanted to prevent disability progression. And they still appreciated the fun, the social, and the competitive aspect of participating in things with their friends, or playing a game. It could have been something like water aerobics, but they enjoyed that social aspect of being with their friends. So kind of these next two slides kind of contrast, but the most common youth adaptive sport is wheelchair basketball. Again, that's the largest organization that's out there, and it's also a team sport, and it's very, very big. In fact, there's about 3,000 members of the NWBA that dwarfs most other adaptive sport organizations by huge factors. You can see a few other team sports like hockey, but track and field, kind of an individual sport, swimming, hand cycling, bocce, pretty prominent Paralympic sports that they were participating in. But primarily, wheelchair basketball is kind of the biggest one out of all. So, but looking at what they're doing now as adults, things change quite a bit. So not a lot of people playing basketball. And again, I would say with my sample, was running, getting recruitment through different sport organizations. So we see some of these, but pushing, which we would say running or walking, they push their wheelchair. General working out, a lot of people who are enjoying that. Again, you see individual sports, and very few people who are actually still being involved with the team sport. So from the survey, the biggest thing from the surveys I saw, what they got out of their adaptive sport experience was fun and community. And here I was thinking, these coaches, what are they doing? They're terrible. But they're like, no, I had one, people were undoubtedly fun, having a great time, and just the community, being part of that larger community of people with disabilities. That was very important, very vital to that. So I show these pictures because I think it demonstrates exactly what they're receiving from this experience. So for the interview, and what was interesting, the interview really shadowed a lot of what I was finding in the surveys with open-ended questions. So people grew up close to a program. And I will say, also in the survey, you didn't play youth adaptive sport if there wasn't a program. I know that sounds very simple-minded, but it's a very important part of the findings. You cannot play an adaptive sport if you don't have access to that in your community. They normalized their disability, so they had role models, or they had coaches, they had volunteers that were successful in life. They have a disability, that they're married, they're holding down a full-time job. You don't always see that model in that community. So having these role models was a big influence on them. And maybe if you were the only youth at your school with a disability, and you go to a tournament, and everybody has a disability. That just makes you feel a part of that larger community. That was a very important thing for them. So I interviewed a lot of former elite athletes, not necessarily intentionally, but a couple of Paralympians, several world champions, and I was kind of thinking this after the fact. I'm like, wow, I had a pretty, very active group there. But undoubtedly, their current focus now, post elite competition, was maintain their personal health and fitness. And I think that's where some of the good data came in. They had personal experience of being fit, how to get fit, and they were motivated and especially knowledgeable on how to become more fit. So they acquired the skills. So maybe they played wheelchair basketball, they're now doing different things, but those skills they learned in that team sport, they are now using in their, for their individual activities. Again, from a mixed methods perspective, this is what I found in the surveys and interviews. What makes a great youth adaptive sport team? Obviously, number one, fun. Heard that theme quite a bit. Local, very important. They learn their motor skills and normalize their disability. They have their role models, and then the social aspect of that. So these are things that kind of came out of the research, but you may not always see that highlighted in the tournament, so to speak. So in my discussion, again, I think that was my biggest takeaway. If I have any one thing I could say is we need to have more programs for people to participate in. You cannot encourage people to be more active when you don't give them the opportunity to be more active. So that was a big part of coming into the chapter 2 and 3 of my dissertation. Is in the summer they have a national meeting for the National Wheelchair Basketball Association. So I'm proposing to provide a workshop on the concepts of this dissertation, but we'll provide an overview on the complexities of disability. And that's something in the background information. People don't always take into account disability when you're providing sport for people with disabilities. So they're just coaching the sport. They don't think about all the other things that are involved. So not just their disability, but their socioeconomic, or their gender, or their race. So there's a lot of things going on at one time, not including their disability. But I want you to describe how adaptive sport makes a positive impact. We're doing a really great job. I think out of all the participants in this study, I had one person giving negative feedback. And this negative feedback was, I didn't get played enough. This person's still playing sport, by the way. He's still involved. He's actually very involved with sport. And that was really the only negative aspect I got from how it's being currently provided. But I think that's important because I see that when you're working with younger kids, youth, to make sure they are getting an opportunity to play. So my idea is to offer suggestions for improvement moving forward. Again, some of the ideas, how to make them active in the league. For my action plan, I am currently incorporating a lot of this into my current courses already. Have lots of student volunteer opportunities already, and we'll plan to continue to do that. In fact, this past week, I've had various clinics and camps for different types of disabilities. A couple of my students just won the Poster Award for College of Education, utilizing the members of my wheelchair basketball team. I am presenting the International Symposium of Adaptive Physical Activity this summer. We already have research lined up for looking at the stats and the persistent stats in the league of going from youth to adults and trying to find any holes that we can help fill there. So, and then definitely from a collegiate university standpoint, making a big press to recruit more students.
So the participants that were in your study, did all of them grow up with a disability? Or did you have some participants that might have been
fully functioning, that develop a disability later, so they may have been able to experience team sports.
I believe that's a huge issue in the disability population. General disabilities are very different than acquired. Someone with an acquired disability may have the possibility to play sport, have those experiences of the youth, then say through military service or through an auto accident, get injured, and then they have that to draw on. They'll go back home and go back and get in shape, so they have that experience. On the congenital side, you don't see that. For example, kids on my team can't catch basketball. It's 100% effort to catch that ball. And we think of that as something you learned in first grade. They didn't have that opportunity. So we're really having to remediate skills. But it's important because with the study itself, I wanted to focus on congenital disabilities. And I did that with the interview. So everyone in the interview had a congenital disability. But the survey was kind of a mixed batch. We had some that had injuries, but people with CPs found that we had.
In your data, are you able to figure out whether your people now as adults are doing aerobic activity, for instance, at least 5 days a week, moderate level, or doing any kind of strength training 2 to 3 days a week? Is that in your data?
They did fill out the IPAC, and that's something the IPAC attempts to capture, is it gives them a med level score throughout the week, and so they were moderately to very active.
What percent of them will kind of meet those standards?
Can't remember off the top of my head, but it was about 80%.
What?
Yes, sir. I had a pretty. I do think if there was a limitation of a study, the sample was like everybody's best dream in terms of this is how you want people to be when you're an adult with a disability. That was my sample. Not intentionally, but it just was.
Well, I was thinking there's an assumption that athletes like physical activity, which isn't true. Athletes often like to play their sport, but they don't really like physical activity in general. And you may have a hook in your study embedded somewhere. How come these people transition better than possibly people who do not have disability in sport into being physically active?
This would kind of be my opinion. They understood what it felt like to be physically fit. And when they felt themselves getting unfit, kind of like myself later, their disability started progressing also. So they found themselves not able to do things like activities of daily life that they used to be able to do. So they're like, oh, I know the cure to that, weight room or pushing lattice. And so they directly had this connection, how to fix this issue. People without disabilities don't always have that. Again, a lot of the interview participants were pretty elite. They knew exactly what to do to fix the problem and identified it very quickly. Again, I said initially my goal was to have a pretty broad idea to see those who did use sport and did not, and I could try to get some correlations there. Unfortunately, was not able to get those.
I'm going to ask about your dissemination. You might go back to that slide if you don't. So I was curious, I think if I understood, the wheelchair basketball didn't translate from youth to adult physical activity or a decrease in terms of their likelihood of participating in a sport. They're more likely to do things like
Individual, yes, sir.
And so a couple of things here, if you just talk about why this is the best dissemination outlet for you. And then second, those last 2 bullet points, I wonder if you'll just dig a little bit deeper there in terms of what the league is currently doing good and suggestions moving forward. What is it from your study that gives you something to say about those 2 items?
Well, your first part, I believe that we're doing a great job. I don't think all the other coaches understand that. So I want to be able to share. And at first I came into this thinking we may not be doing a great job, and that was the motivation. And to find out we are doing a great job is good news. And so to highlight some of those things for the current coaches, start focusing these a little bit more, and that's only going to make your program even better. So that was the initial concept in general. But as far as what the league is currently doing good, this sounds very simple, but we have a league, and there's teams across the country, not enough, and so trying to find ways to incentivize increase for more teams, make it cheaper. Maybe that's one of my suggestions moving forward. I'm hoping I'm answering your question somewhat. But I think we're doing a great job. For example, some influence I've already had, we changed up the way the tournaments were seeded. We used to do low seed versus high seed, and we were winning by 50-0. I said that's a terrible motivator for both sides. So they have already made those changes in the tournaments where they're seeding people closer together in their actual games. So this helps motivate people. It's a close competition, as we learned. And so those are the things I want, not just maybe in our region, but other regions to improve upon. We can't just use the traditional seeding thing that basketball uses, but because of the disability aspect.
I'll do a quick follow-up if you don't mind. So I think you bring such good experience. You're the right person to deliver this message. So it sounds like some of this is based on your knowledge of what's working and what's not. And then another piece is you did a research study, and there's some results that really can help this organization learn something. Can you point to just one or two examples from your data that you think that this organization would kind of have an aha moment and think, gosh, I'm really glad to know that new information, and it can help me be a better organization?
Again, I appreciate what you said, because the background allowed me to see the things I don't think maybe other people will be able to see. But just the aspect of having people with disabilities volunteer. That's something that data showed that I see someone, they have a job, they're married, they have a regular life. That was a huge impact to them as a youth. And just telling the league, hey, try to get people with disabilities involved. Whether they're just playing scrimmaging on the weekend, but they're around, don't limit it to just kids, try to get adults with disabilities involved also. Is that kind of an example? I mean, that would be one kind of idea. Also, I think just teaching them skills. So in the summer, our program, we do strength and conditioning and pushing drills. And I do that intentionally, kind of based on this, is to teach them those ancillary skills that allows that particular thing to carry over into their adulthood. So when they're no longer playing basketball, they know how to lift weights, they know how to do parabands, they know how to do different conditioning activities they can do alone. So I'm trying to teach those motor skills. But yeah, I did know that, but I didn't really realize how big of an impact that was until I hear them saying, hey, I push because, or I lift weights because my coach always made me lift weights.
I was just curious about one of the things you mentioned was access to teams. You don't have a team around, you can't play. So is the league as a national body set up teams, or these set up by volunteers at the local level on depending on each town?
They're literally set up by me.
Like all it's all at the local level it's all.
I say that because, if I did not take it upon myself to start the team, it would not have started. And so I only had one player that had ever played basketball. So I feel pretty proud about that. But it takes a champion on the ground, a champion in the community to go, I'm going to raise money, I'm going to do this. So that was something I wanted to get to moving forward. We need to incentivize those champions, make it cheaper, make it easier. Matter of fact, I was in the committee just a few weeks ago to help start new teams. What did I learn in starting my team that can help other teams start teams? And my first point was parents. But all joking aside, they can look pretty bad.
Hi, great job
and really important work, obviously. Not enough work done this area. I'm going to ask you a tough question first, and then I'm going to ask you just a follow-up to answer the thing a little more. You presented, I mean, I looked at your dissertation, I know you're simple within this text, you have to narrow it down and make it so those bits of the small number of pages. But can you talk more about your data analysis for the qualitative pieces of the interviewing part?
Yeah, so with 12 interviews, I had kind of three areas. Looking at their youth sport experience, kind of what they got out of it. So for each question, I kind of looked across the 12 answers and kind of found a common theme, if you will, for that particular question. And so then I did that for each one. And then in kind of each general area, like your youth experiences, how we kind of developed kind of a major idea from all of those questions. So, for example, I was trying to understand, I would ask them questions about, was there someone that made an impact? Then I asked the follow-up question, what did the coach do to impact you? So a lot of those answers weren't always, the coach didn't always have the most impact. It became more of the volunteers and the adults in general.
Yeah, I mean, you've got the sort of qualitative references that you could use to sort of explain that, and then maybe another sentence within your dissertation. The committee decided to do that. But what I'm really trying to, I mean, I looked at your appendix I and J. So an I has these nice little bios of the people that you talk to, which is very important because they're the people you want to know from. They're the ones you're learning from. And then in J, you've got some data analysis where you're putting in a, so for example, you've got a major theme fun, and then you've got references or sort of terms. And so to me, some of those were very exciting and interesting. So for example, you said, it was very fun and good. And another one you said, I got to be a team like everybody else. And another one was, I want to live a full active life. So that was under the healthy one. And another one is, it's hard for me to get into places. Sorry, that's tough for people. Persons with disabilities, and then the other one was there's nothing for disabled people where I live. So I guess what I was, wondering and getting you to think maybe going forward, not necessarily in this work, because your committee can decide where you draw the line there, but it would be kind of neat for you to represent some of that because it's really you've learned a lot from these people, haven't you?
Oh yes, sir.
And obviously, in this small dissertation, you can't put Bill in there. But could I just leave with one question? And then we can talk about this later if you want. What I really meant, if you're not sure. What would you say you really learned from the interviews, from the interviewees? Because you already know a lot. So you know a lot, and you refer to all the literature, and these meetings with everybody, and what colleagues you work with. But what do the interviewees teach you? Is, I guess what I'm trying to say.
Again, I'm trying to simplify it. It just went back to there's a program in my community that, whether it's been a larger city like Birmingham or Chicago, and that was just a resounding. And another I haven't talked about was typically there's a champion in their family, whether there's a mother or a father. So they had an individual helping them do that as a youth. I think that was going back to the beginning is access to programs is such an important part. So we have people that were Paralympians that it was almost lucky. If that was not near them, they would not have ever been able to get to that point. So that just kind of and some of them were driving. Someone had to drive an hour and a half one way, but still it was close enough to get to. But that really impacted me. That, of course, I was in the literature review, but to talk to them and to realize, this could have been a very different lifestyle for this individual as a human being, not being active and fit, but being another, course statistic.
And then what I'm trying to say is you could utilize that to inform, like when you're talking to people on the community, or talking to people at the university level, to encourage them making better decisions, to make things more available.
Yeah,
It might be a good voice, so, because you've got it there. You can see, I'm just encouraging them to look at it and use it.
So if I from an inclusive standpoint, I guess that's what, are you saying to encourage people to be more inclusive with?
Yeah, for you as an advocate of this area, I think a lot of it's there.
And I think he's even saying use the participant voice.
Yes,
Okay, sorry.
it's fine, I have to hear, I may not understand my 3 days.
What percent of your 65 people,
62.
what percent of them have progressive disability?
I couldn't tell you that I'll hang out, going back and looking. There were a handful, but we did have amputees, and we have spinal bifida, cerebral palsy. Those aren't typically considered progressive disorders, although they can be somewhat. But I don't know exactly.
All of your people, reduction said that did people in your study have cognitive abnormalities?
No,
You screened.
I try my best to screen intellectual disabilities, which is an important note to make when you're talking about Paralympic sport versus intellectual disorders. So physical versus intellectual. And then just a side thought, like I have athletes on my team that participate in Special Olympics, and they pretty much got kicked out because they wanted to win and kick everybody's butt. And like, you can't do that here. Why not? So they want that competitive outlet, just like everybody else can go on. Sure.
I guess as far as for everyone else, we will be wrapping up the board today. Show doesn't come till 4:15 because we left time for people to meet with their committees if they want to. So if you think that's going to be the case, then let us know. Possible if everybody's finished early next week. That's possible to show the center. Yeah.